Hi there, I'm Adam Forbes. I'm the host of the Corporate Escapology podcast. Today, my guest is Charlie Hyde. Charlie has worked in a variety of roles in corporate life. She's worked at Sky, Accenture, and most recently for the Frasers Group, where she is the Group Head of Service Operations. Frasers Group is the owner of Sports Direct. But the most interesting thing about Charlie, I think, is the fact that she has run a bunch of side hustles alongside these jobs, things that just interested her, like a couple of clothing businesses that she set up. She's also established a training business aimed at consultants using YouTube. She came and worked with me. In fact, she was the first person to test out some of the escape method tools that I've developed for the book when she was thinking about leaving, and she has finally left now. So let's meet Charlie and find out what she's up to next. So, hey, Charlie, it's great to have you here on the Corporate Escapology podcast. I'm really excited to share your story with some of the listeners. So why don't you begin telling us a bit more about you and your journey to Frasers Group, where you are now, and the little steps that have taken you there.
Sure. Well, look, Adam, thank you very much for having me on the podcast. I really appreciate it. I've had a kind of corporate career that sort of spans 9 years. And when I started out, I had this vision that I wanted to be in the corporate world forever and I wanted to climb the greasy pole. And that was what I thought I would always want to do. And I did fairly well at that. So I started a career in Sky, and then I went to consulting, which is perhaps maybe the epitome of a corporate career. Not only being in a corporate, but helping other corporates, and you really couldn't get more corporate. I then sort of went on a bit of a journey of self-discovery. So in 2021, I had a burnout, and it sort of made me reassess whether the corporate career that I thought I had always wanted is indeed really what I had wanted, or whether I'd sort of fallen into following it blindly. And so I went on a bit of a journey of experimentation. I left Accenture last year and came over to a boutique consulting firm who placed me in Frasers Group, and then I moved over to Frasers Group permanently. And now I'm sort of exiting Frasers Group and corporate career specifically more generally. So yeah, it's been a bit of a wild journey,
Wild
lots of
journey
sort
in
of.
corporate life. It's interesting that you really wanted. What was it that made you really want a corporate career when you were younger? What did you imagine it was, and think this is the one for me?
That's a great question, and I think I suppose I liked the idea of the stability, and I came from a generation where my parents were, you go into a company and you sort of work your way up, and then you probably will move about halfway and go to another career, like another company, and then work again. And so they weren't necessarily the start at the bottom, go to the top generation, sort of one after that. And I thought, yeah, maybe something like that would be fine for me. And I wanted the stability. Both my parents did leave corporate careers and started their own businesses, which was great for them. But also, I have seen the challenges that come with being an entrepreneur, and we're never off or always working. And I thought, maybe corporate career really just give you something else. And it actually turned out to be really wrong. So when I was at Sky, there was a big round of redundancies, and I saw people who'd been in corporate careers for 20 odd years suddenly leaving. That made a big impression on me as a graduate. And then I think you really could have taken either way at that point and gone, "Whoa, maybe not corporate careers," but actually made me double down on it and go, "Okay, I still want the corporate career, but I want to make it work for me. I want to be in the driving seat."
Consulting. So, at what point did you think to yourself, like, say you were at Sky, did you think, right, consulting, I'll give that a whirl? And what were your motivations there, coming out of a steady job with one employer to then going and working for clients, albeit for one employer?
Yeah, so I didn't actually. I sort of heard of this thing called consulting. I didn't quite know what people did. I assumed they just sat in glass buildings and made slides and did it for very long hours. I didn't really know what they did. But then I was on a project within Sky where I worked with someone as a business analyst, and she was brilliant. And I looked up to her immensely, and I was like, wow, I want to be like Bijal. And then I was like, so I sort of spoke to her about how she got to where she was, and how did you learn all this? And I remember once I was in this workshop, and she absolutely commanded the room. She was so prepared, everything was brilliant. I'd never seen something done that brilliantly before, and I was like, I want to be like you. And then she explained about this place that she'd been called Accenture, and how she'd learned everything while she was at Accenture. And I was like, well, if I want to be like you, maybe I should learn from the people that taught you, because I look up to you. But you are only one person and we are only on one project together, and I can't spend my entire life attached to you. That would be weird. So let's so maybe I need to go to the school of teaching that you went to. And so I put in an application. I'd never thought I'd get accepted, but I thought, well, I definitely won't get accepted if I don't apply. So 3 interviews later, a couple of weeks later, offer. And I thought, you know what, it's too good an opportunity. I don't quite know what I'm letting myself in for, but I know
Mm.
that hopefully I'll be something like that when I come out the other end. And I was like,
Yeah,
let's
that's
just do it.
really good. It's great when you have these role models that inspire you to do something different and to be like them, and then you can see a pathway to do that without becoming them, in a sort of creepy way.
Yeah.
You stayed, was it 7 years you stayed at Accenture?
5, just
Five
under
years.
5.
So what motivated you then to change after 5 years? Was it this sense of like I need to keep moving, like you mentioned at the beginning?
It was growing rather than moving. So I was aligned to telco, and then when I was there for the 5 years I was there, telco was a really exciting place to be. There was lots of innovation. It was a good place to be during COVID, because obviously communication and broadband and working from home and all these things became really important, and there was lots of innovation. Did loads of great projects, and then I sort of found that, as a consultant, you're a generalist, but you have to have some degree of specialism. You have to be known for something at a point in time, otherwise you get difficult to staff on projects. And the higher that you move up, the more you kind of pigeonhole yourself really into something. And I found that even though I was going to different clients, I was doing a lot of very similar things. Really, sometimes I was literally just making sure that nothing had the previous client's logo on it, and was just tidying it up a little bit. And because it was so similar, because I was in an industry where it's relatively small number of clients, like it's quite a tight community of people experiencing very, very similar challenges. I'm not for 1 second suggesting that this is what all consultants do, and that's not what I did all of the time, but I found myself doing that. And on the one hand, people are like, great, you're demonstrating you're a real expert. On the other hand, I'm like, am I though? Because really what I'm demonstrating is that I can take one picture and like change it from one color to another color and not accidentally put the wrong logos on there. I'm not sure if I'm really demonstrating that I'm an amazing person. I'm sure this is not my definition of amazing.
I'm
So I just felt
sure
like I
that
was,
came. I'm sure that
yeah,
came. But what it did do was after 5 years, like consulting does, it's such an accelerator because you are at quite
100%.
a young age in front of clients. You have to really show up well. They're going to challenge you pretty quickly in a way that you don't get challenged maybe inside a corporate. There's a sort of room to grow and a pace to grow. But as a consultant, you're being charged by the hour. You've got to be good from day one. So it really forces you to up your game. And so when you left, you got like you moved to quite a senior role after that within Frasers Group, which owns Sports Direct.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I would really echo that. I learned more in probably my first 3 months, maybe even less than that. Probably, yeah, my first 2 to 3 months in Accenture than I did in the previous 2 years at Sky. And it was a big culture shock. And I remember when I originally turned up, it was about 2 weeks in, and I thought, I don't know if I can do this. Because the pace was so much higher, the expectation was so much higher, and I didn't want to be the one to be falling behind. But I knew I didn't have quite the right foundations, and I was just a step behind some other people who'd kind of grown up in consulting, because I was having to train myself a lot of the things that they'd been taught at analyst school that I didn't turn up knowing. And so,
Okay. Oh, so you joined
um,
as a consultant rather than an analyst. Then you joined as an
so
experienced hire. Go.
I joined in this weird role. So I joined in as a senior analyst, which is like it is an experienced higher entry, but it's not quite at the level of consultant. It's sort of something that sits just in between, which was absolutely the right place for me to start. But holy croaky, was that a learning experience? But I loved it. And initially, after the first 2 weeks, I thought, God, am I doing the right thing? And then I was like, yeah, I really am. It was really tough, but wow, I just could see the transformation, and I could feel myself learning the way I conducted myself and the way I spoke and the way I thought was. I was like, wow, I understand how Bijal did what she did because I'm learning now, and that's exactly what I came for. And I like hit my stride, and I just woof, had a great, like, I had a quite an accelerated career in Accenture as well. I genuinely believe consulting changed my life. I wouldn't be where I am now without consulting, even in an entrepreneurial like context as well. Just the way consulting teaches you to think, so valuable. And then yeah, absolutely, it is the multiplier effect because you can think strategically whilst doing implementation. You can talk to really senior people. You can kind of navigate some of the political elements that come with senior people and business strategy and some of those things. So yeah, I started as a kind of interim head of delivery in Frasers, but then the title permanently became group head of service operations. So sitting across operations and the delivery function and bringing them together in an IT context.
You've now decided to leave Frasers Group and try something different. So why? Before we come to what?
Um, yeah. Why? I think so. On paper, I've lived every consultant's dream. So I joined as a senior analyst at the age of 22, and at 28 I took a head of role. And on paper, I've had an accelerated, brilliant career, and yet something doesn't quite feel like it fits. And it's difficult to say what that is. Even I'm not sure I fully have processed the thing I can put my finger on, but something just doesn't quite feel like it fits for me. So I am going to try something new. I'm gonna go. Depends when you publish this podcast, but I am in discussion with a boutique consultancy to go there and grow something within there. And it's sort of small enough that it started like it's entrepreneur startup mindset. Um, but it's not my own company, but it will give me the kind of right balance between that and building my own thing on the side in parallel that they know about, and it's also related to consultancy, so everything kind of ties together. Like my business on the side relates to teaching people about consulting and how to get into consulting, so being still a consultant and in consulting helps me make sure that I'm giving the relevant information out to other people and still teaching them in relevant and valuable ways. So the two things sort of complement each other nicely.
Great. Wow. Okay. So that's a bit different since we last spoke, which is really exciting. So when we started speaking, you were thinking about leaving. Um, you'd had one of these side hustles that was actually a business creating revenues for 7 years or something like that, a
Yeah.
long time anyway. You'd been running that business along the side of all of this sort of change going on, and and so tell us a little bit about that business, and specifically then why you haven't just gone and built that business and just made that the real focus rather than these two other things that we'll talk a bit more about.
Yeah, sure. So, a digital marketing agency. So, my background, my degree was in English literature, and I've really enjoyed writing. And I did an internship, and I did some work with marketing, sort of prior to starting with Sky. And I continue to do freelance marketing work in the background. So, predominantly in SEO and paid campaigns. Really enjoyed it, and I didn't do much on like outreach, but referrals leads to work, right? So I was sort of doing it. I'd probably do 2 or 3 engagements a year, and I just, I've met so many interesting people and like really different and varied um, industries and things that I've done and worked with people, sports, commercial property, hotels, all sorts of things, recruitment companies, like so interesting, charities, like been fascinating. And I thought at a point in time when I was questioning, do I really want to continue doing a corporate career? Um, I can do this. I'll just make this the full-time thing, and I'll bring a consultancy element and I'll turn it into like a growth partnership and evolve it. And then, to really succeed at something, you have to niche down. And as I was doing that, I'm thinking I was turning away a lot of very interesting people and interesting work and clients because it didn't fit into the niche. And I felt kind of sad about that. And I thought, well, if you decided to like continue it with as it is and keep doing great stuff. So I have a team of freelancers who work with me, so that it's not, there is a small group of us, but the value of the model that we have is you can flex in and flex out as you need to or want to.
Yeah.
And so if it's fun and you've been enjoying what you're doing, if to scale that, you have to turn it into something that you're not really enjoying. Why are you doing that? Why are you saying I want to leave something that feels like not the right type of work for something else that's not the right type of work? With the downside of it's my own, I've got to make it, I've got to grow it for everybody, and I'm making it hard on myself. What are you doing? You was enjoying it and it was fun. Why? And it was making money. Why are we destroying the thing that's really fun? So I thought, actually, do you know what? I actually don't think that's going to be right. And it came at a time where I was trying to scale, and I had a period of ill health at the same time, and so I was forced to take a break. It was not optional. I had to take a break, and as I was taking a break, as I was coming back into better health, and I thought, right, what are we going to pick up now? That just wasn't the thing that excited me.
Okay. Okay. And so even though you've invested a lot of time and yourself in that, you still think actually that's not what I want to do going forward. So there's a sunk cost that you're kind of prepared to accept.
Kind of, but I don't think it is sunk cost, right? Because along the way, we've met lots of really interesting people, and we're still talking to people about engagements and doing stuff with people. It's just I'm not saying no to people that don't fit into a very specific niche purely because I want to be known in a niche. If anything, we are still growing, but we're not growing with a very like specific identity. It's very, very generic. But that will get you to a certain point, but it won't get you to the point where you can sustain an income predictably for yourself and for a team, unless it is in that freelance capacity.
Hmm. Okay.
And so actually it's not really a sunken cost in any way. It's saying I'm not going to make that the new thing to go to. I'm going to continue to kind of put a boundary around it, or I accept the boundary of its success.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So you will still carry on doing bits and pieces like that.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's nice. Okay. Right, before we shift to the what you are doing next, I just want to, if you don't mind, just talk a little bit about some of the thought processes about leaving that you and I spoke about. So you were very good at letting me practice lots of my tools on you as we got to know one another, and it was very revealing to me when we looked at what you were giving up from the
Mm-hmm.
corporate job, and therefore what was holding you back in some way from making the move that you've now made. And it was a word you just mentioned, predictable income specifically. And that is going to be a massive concern for almost everybody, I'm sure, thinking about leaving their corporate job, because it's one of those things that we get so used to that we just don't even think about it. So the idea of it not being there is terrifying for most people. And I mean, and the reality is people can't just walk away from that. By the time they're sort of mid-career, they've got responsibility, they've got kids, they've got houses, mortgages, whatever, they've got lifestyles that they want to preserve. And the idea of walking away from that, and there's two bits to it, aren't there? There's the income part and there's the predictable part too. I mean, they're
Mm-hmm.
actually they're actually both important, because you could have salary coming in a lumpy capacity, maybe as you've had through the marketing agency, but actually because it's not predictable, it's kind of worrying too, and it stops you maybe moving because of that. I'm just interested in your thoughts processes and.
Yeah, I think it was the biggest barrier for me, and I suppose I always thought that it was, but as we were going through, your course, I realised just how much it was important to me. And actually, when you challenged me on, well, you sort of put this thing, but really is it? And it became stark how important that was for me. And I think it's true for so many people. And I think this is why, for me, at this point in the journey, I'm going to find a balance. I'm not going to another corporate, but I am going to find this bit of a balance between a predictable income, but with enough kind of work-life balance and wrapper around to be able to continue doing my piece. And I'm not hiding that I'm doing it. I've been upfront about it. They watch my
Mm.
videos, they know about my business, and the two things kind of tie nicely into each other. They don't compete with each other, they complement each other, and you can kind of feed ideas across. And so it's that sweet spot between predictable income but also building something outside and transferring the messages across both so that you actually add twice as much value.
Yeah, so let's talk about it then. So this is the next thing is something again that you were working on a few years back along the side on the side. Yeah, tell us about it.
Yeah, so I started a YouTube channel mainly because when I was off work with burnout, I was like, I need to do something because now I feel better to do something. I've got to do something. And I started blogging and I really enjoyed that. But I thought I'd like to try a bit of YouTube, just to experiment with a bit of video, like just try a different medium. I don't know much about this. This is really for me to learn a new skill. Maybe no one will watch it. I don't know. Who cares? So I just made some videos and put them online and about burnout. And then I kind of thought, well, really what I'm talking about is burnout in the context of a corporate career, but more specifically consulting. And then, I'm not anti-consulting in any way. Like clearly, I've really enjoyed it. It changed my life, and um, I don't think that whatever I did when I had a successful career in consulting is unique to me. Whatever I've got or whatever I've done, I can package that up and share that to others. So I then sort of changed the direction of the channel away from purely mental health and corporate life into sort of more general succeeding as a consultant. And that's when the channel really started to grow a bit and to get its own identity. And then I tried to make one video a week, and I did take 11 months off, but I was quite good for about 18 months at making one video a week, and now I'm back to making videos again. And it was all about consulting, what life's really like as a consultant, giving some tips and tricks. But there are things that you need to know as a consultant that literally will get zero views because they're not entertaining. And YouTube fundamentally isn't entertainment. It is an education, but it's like edutainment. And so I'd always had this ambition that I do want to help others. Really, really completely changed my professional life, my financial life, like everything about me changed in a good way because of becoming and being in consulting. And I hope that I can help others get the same thing. So it always had this vision of like build the channel and then turn it into a business that sort of sits around the channel, but the channel never disappears. And what I'm building is called Consulting Survival. So, building out an education platform and community for people who want to join or have just joined consulting to help them stand out and succeed. I know when I joined consulting, I had to learn a lot on the fly, and I was learning a lot off YouTube videos and internal training resources. But sometimes they were hard to find on what you actually needed and what do you really need to know to succeed in those first few months, like in your first kind of 6 months to a year in consulting. What do you really need? And so I also didn't want to be a burden to my managers who were very, very busy people, and you can't show yourself up in front of the client. So where am I going to go to find this information? Well, there wasn't really anything. So this is where I want to fill the gap with consulting survival. And, from a consultant's consulting company perspective, a firm's perspective, I am going to come in and take away the headspace that their engagement leads, managers, senior managers are using to have to teach these people, oh, please, why can't you just do it? Why am I showing you this? I don't have time for this. Those bits, I'm going to take that away. Consulting Survival will take care of that for you.
I see. Okay, great. And then, as you say, there's a nice synergy with the consulting that you'll be doing in the other parts of the week. So, roughly, what sort of time are you going to be allocating to each?
I try to sort of wrap around my day, so either in the morning, or a little bit in the morning, a little bit in the evening, or if I've not got up the next morning, I'll sort of do it all in the evening. And so I try to wrap around and do a little bit at the weekend. One thing I've started doing that I think is really helpful is tracking my time. So I use Clockify, and I have a series of like tasks in there that like whatever it is I'm working on, I just put it in there, and it builds up as like projects over time. So you just select from the drop down, and then it starts, and so the timer just counts on and on and on until you say I've stopped that task now. And then I look back once a week and go, right, where was my time really spent? And then I also do a weekly retro where I think about, well, what went well, what could be better, and what needs, like, what's broken. And also, what am I going to do the next? What do I want to have accomplished in the next week? So, if anybody's familiar with Agile, it's almost like a mini sort of Scrum sprint type model. But with me, myself, and I, we have a great time.
Oh,
Um,
okay. Big
uh,
celebrations at the end of the week.
yeah, we have a great time. Okay, we have to be careful not to speak over ourselves. But it's been really effective because actually, where you think you spend your time, where you actually spend your time, when you start measuring it, don't always end up being the same thing. It's really fascinating. It's like you get a lot of kind of hidden lost time in tasks that don't really add value, but you've kind of tricked yourself into thinking they add value unless you put guardrails around to protect yourself. It's almost like the hidden calories, right? You don't realize you're eating. Oh, yeah, I did actually eat a chocolate bar, and wow, I really did eat all that sugar this today. It's just holding yourself account. What gets measured gets managed. In a corporate world, everyone laughs at timesheets and thinks they're a waste of time. But actually, as a solopreneur, they're actually one of your greatest assets.
Cool. One of the things I'm really interested in, because I think actually it's largely at the root of a lot of why people are unhappy in jobs,
Yeah,
is nice cup of tea there.
yeah. No,
Is
thank you. So, Lucy just bought me a cup of tea, which is very kind of her.
That's very nice. Is confidence, and
Yeah,
thinking of confidence like on a chart,
yeah.
how that fluctuates over time. I'm interested how you would characterize your confidence levels over those 10, 12 years, whatever, of like, from Sky or maybe even before, and then going from that to Accenture to and then eventually to Frasers, and now how are you feeling? I just wonder if there's any patterns there that are interesting to explore.
Yeah. So I guess when I was at Sky, I suppose if this is sort of average, I suppose I sort of started here and I was like, oh dear. I knew I didn't quite fit with Sky, and I couldn't really explain why. And that's often a problem, right? Because you don't know why. Objectively, if you look on paper, there's nothing wrong. I work with nice people. I have a good work-life balance. I don't have heaps of stress in my job. And I didn't live very far away either. I had like the perfect commute, like half an hour, which is great. That's enough time to wind down and wind up, but it's not so long that it feels like a drag. Like on paper, everything is perfect. Why does the shoe not fit? And so you that takes like that knocks your confidence because you think, well, objectively everything looks great. I must be the problem. Oh no, I have terrible self confidence now because I must be the drama. Why am I so ungrateful? Um, and actually, I have this weird thing where the tougher something is, the more confident I feel because I take real energy from seeing, wow, times are really tough, but we nailed it and we walked through it and it was brilliant. And so I sort of draw my energy in the inverse way that you think you should do. So I sort of have the opposite of what you might expect. But I think actually, probably most people who listen to this and are considering some type of entrepreneurial self-driven thing are probably like quite similar. I think this is
Mm,
probably true for a lot of entrepreneurs. The harder something is, like the more confident you actually feel. So when I went to
mhm,
Accenture and suddenly it was really hard and it was long hours, and I was also like didn't have some of the advantages that people had had around me, like the consulting school and coming from that consulting graduate background. actually, even as I saw it really clicking into place, clients were happy, everyone was happy. I was like, oh yes, brilliant. I feel really confident because the thing that I didn't think I could do or didn't know I could do, I'm doing it. And more than I'm doing it, I excelled. Like, end of my first year, I got a double promotion and I felt amazing because I never worked harder for anything. And I'd really, really, really earned that. And what is great about consulting is that you don't earn a promotion at somebody else's expense, because you pitch, everyone gets the chance to pitch for promotion. This is why consulting environments are actually really nice to work in. People think, oh, long hours must be toxic. Not at all. It was brilliant. And I had like a real camaraderie. There were a few of us that got promoted all at the same time. Like, everyone is winning, everyone is succeeding. And I felt fantastic. And then again, I had this sort of weird thing where I was like, I know I need to move on from Accenture. I actually feel I feel promise in this, because I know that objectively I've stopped growing and my time is done, and I know that we're all leaving for the right reasons and we're parting company and it's all good. I felt quite confident again. And then, I've learned a whole bunch of new things in Frasers. And even though I've not always sort of known everything, and there's lots of variables, retail is a very, very like fast-paced environment, very dynamic. Technology is changing all the time. When I started at Frasers, AI was like a sort of thing you'd talk about maybe, and suddenly, boom, it's really come into the space, and there's a lot to learn there, and we don't want to fall behind, so you try and do stuff there as well. And it sort of boosts your confidence, and then you sort of work with some of the partners and the big companies in this space, and you walk in like, wow, I know nothing. And like the moment your confidence drops is actually the point that it increases, because you never want to be in a position where you
Yeah.
don't, like, if you are feeling like you know everything and you're feeling really confident, there is probably a trap somewhere you probably don't. So actually having that knock in of confidence is really great. You need it.
I think it's such an interesting. Yeah, it's such an interesting. Yours is such an interesting example because one of the reasons I think why confidence does start to fall is because we start doing the same thing for too long, and you've never really had that because
Yeah.
even though you're 5 years at Accenture, and you were a lot of the time with the same client. I think you're tested
Yep.
all the time. You're
Yep. For sure.
so you can't get comfy. You can't coast for a year because you've got family commitments. Whatever the client's like, you're on my time now,
Yeah.
and I think that forces you to be. Well, it keeps you being tested, and if you're tested and you pass those tests, whatever they might be, I think your confidence builds, and I think maybe just an assertion. If you'd stayed at Frasers another 5 years, maybe you would have that would have started to have declined if you hadn't had the constant tests. That would
Mm.
be an assertion. Just from my experience talking to people, when you're just doing the same thing like that, it just starts to erode a bit insidiously. You're not even necessarily aware of it, but you start thinking, I'm not competent enough, or I've not got the qualifications or the charisma or whatever it's needed to get another job that's not this one. Whereas
Yeah.
you, because of your moves, and that's what a lot of what they say when you're early on in your career, keep moving all the time. That's the way you get the promotions. That's the way you get the pay increase. But it's also the way you keep your confidence really, really high, because you're constantly being tested in all these interviews. If you're successful, boost to the confidence. It's really it's sort of the opposite of when later on, when you've kind of stayed in this career maybe a bit too long, maybe even in the same job a bit too long, and that without that test, you don't you're not proving your worth. I think potentially that's what it is, and that just translates into a sort of decline in the confidence.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And even when I was at Accenture, even though I knew I wanted to stay, even when I was at my happiest, I still applied for other jobs and went to interviews, because,
Did you?
and I was quite open with my line manager that that's what I was doing, and I explained that I don't ever want to feel trapped, right? I want to feel like I'm here by choice, and as long as I feel like I'm here by choice, you'll actually get better out of me. And he was really
Yeah.
understood it, and he was really supportive of it, and actually helped me to prepare for some of the interviews, which I mean is amazing leadership.
I want to end just really with your advice, because I think there are these moments that you've had where you have made a change happen that involved some risk. and hope as well in that change too. You were hopeful, certainly leaving Sky, that you had what it took to be a great consultant. And maybe there was hope leaving Accenture too into something client side, that you could actually do that in a more corporate sense than a consulting sense. Um, I'm just interested in what advice you'd have for people who are in that space now, thinking, and maybe particularly like tied to this point about predictable income, which was, really kind of core to your decision making, just to give them a bit of hope too.
I think that purpose and intention matter. Um, and I think if you take care of those, the rest does follow. So I guess it kind of ties into a bit of everything that we've spoken about. So, for example, the discipline piece, as long as what you're doing, you're spending your time intentionally, how you're spending it is irrelevant. So, um, and what drives you as to how you're going to intentionally spend your time is your connection to your purpose. And I think in a way that's really one of the things I took from your course and how your course is structured, around actually really shining the light on that and holding the mirror up and going, wow, actually it is this, and it what you think it might not actually be the thing it is. So having that objective kind of course, but also your time to kind of shine that light and be that questioning is really helpful. So if you're considering, breaking out from the corporate world or making a change, actually that coaching is really valuable, and it's an investment in being able to know you're doing the right thing. And then once you've got that, you need to then put the guardrails in around yourself to hold yourself accountable for being intentional. So things like some reflection time and a bit of structure around how you reflect, measuring your time, is where I think I am really where I actually am. You've also almost got to try and be your own consultant, and then the decisions that leads you to means that everything else will take care of itself.
Excellent, thanks, and thanks for the plug. So, and in return, let me ask you: how do people find out more about consultant survival, and where to find you on YouTube? These channels, for
Yeah,
example.
sure. So I've got a website, Consulting Survive. Actually, is it consultingsurvival.com or .co.uk? It is.
Let
God.
me ask you that again, because I had a bloody reminder going off in the middle of that as well. So let me
Yeah,
ask. Yeah,
that's
you
all
find.
right.
So thanks for the plug there. And in reciprocation, let me invite you to plug Consultant Survival. So where can people find you? Where can people find these entertaining or edutaining YouTube clips of yours?
Yeah, sure. So consultingsurvival.com, and also on YouTube it is Consulting Charlie, and there's a link to the YouTube on consultingsurvival.com. So yeah, come and join us. Got a free newsletter on a Monday that goes out called the Monday Download as well, and it gives everyone the kind of key headlines that you need to know as a consultant. And what we do that nobody else does in their newsletters is do a bit of interpretation, right? So we do the so what. What does that mean for consultants and consulting specifically, which is what sets us apart? And we do it in less time than it takes to drink a coffee. And I have proven that through my own coffee drinking.
Okay, great. Excellent. Well, it's been brilliant talking to you, Charlie. Thanks so much. And good luck in the new consulting, boutique consulting role as well. So I'm excited to see how it goes on for you. Thanks a lot.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.